Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus just hosted their first 2020 census over the weekend to empower local Latino communities to feel safe and to participate in the census.
That's right. Latino Caucus co-chair State Representative Hernandez and State Senator Omar Aquino are here to tell us more about their efforts. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk about the 2020 census. Why is it so important that everyone be counted?
Sure. So the census is something that's done every 10 years. It's basically since the inception of this country to count how many people reside in this country. Doesn't matter what their immigration status is. If you live in this country, we want to count for a few reasons. One, it's money. It makes sure that the finances and the dollars that we can get from the federal government to states is accurate. And the other thing is representation as well. After the census, we do drawings of redistricting rather. And so that's for congressional, statewide elections like ours, and even local maps. But also it has an impact on business. You know, business people, entrepreneurs, they want to know, marketers want to know what community looks like, and if they're going to invest dollars in certain communities, or how to invest those dollars best. And you get that by the census. You get the makeup of communities.
The Trump administration pushed pretty heavily to get a question on the census about legal status, and that certainly scared a lot of people in the community. It ultimately didn't come to be. Republicans were saying it's just we want to know an accurate count of what's going on. A lot of Democrats and people on the left suggested that it was a scare tactic, so we didn't count so that certain communities would be underrepresented. Either way, even though it's not on the census, I imagine it has the community rattled.
Yes. Agreed, but I do really want to emphasize that that question is not going to be, the citizenship question is not going to be on the application. So it's extremely important that we get as close to an accurate number, because as it was said earlier, those numbers really are the indicators of where the funding is going to go. So it's extremely important. Just an example, in the Latino community, based on the last census, we were undercounted. Children under 5 were undercounted by 1 million.
Wow.
Now, so when you say all family members are counted in, it includes the babies, newborns. So we got to get that across and be very clear that it's so necessary to get to that accurate count in order for us to really receive the amount of funding that is deserved to communities.
Because we're talking about education, we're talking about emergency services, support services, different things like that. It's really impactful.
Yes, public safety, school buildings, those numbers really give they're the indicators of where the funding should be aimed at.
So for example, for that undercount of children from 0 to 5, you're talking about Head Start dollars not going to communities. You're talking about public school dollars for another decade that is going to be misappropriated because we're not identifying the people that live in those communities.
Fear in the community certainly has been rooted pretty heavily, especially since the 2016 presidential election and the run-up to it. Yeah. So we're talking about census workers. They go door to door. They're knocking on doors. That also harkens to some really tragic situations with ICE, of course, going through and doing their what they consider their jobs. What I want to know is, are people afraid of what that knock at the door is, who's going to be there, and they don't want to actually answer the door?
Yes, there is. Right now, currently, because of the rhetoric at the national level, there's been what you call Know Your Right campaigns. So there's sort of a contradiction going on. Don't knock on the door, but then census coming in, it's about knocking on the door and opening the door. So the message has to get out to those, especially who are in fear, how we're going to go about this. So the Census Bureau is working with that to really hire people among the neighborhoods, so it's people you recognize. That's an example. The other is, on our end, we like to get the message out that there are other alternatives of how to apply. Online, go to the libraries. So it's really a marketing piece of a message that has to get out to all the communities.
Yeah. I want to stress that because you guys have been in the communities. What communities are you getting ready to go to next?
So just past weekend, the Legislative Latino Caucus Foundation, we partnered with our foundation to have a census tour. So we got on a bus, went to different communities. We were in the south side of Chicago. We were in the north side of Chicago. We went to West Chicago, the suburbs, Hanover Park, Aurora. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't just hitting the Chicagoland area, or Chicago, the city rather. There are people throughout the state that we need to get to. There are communities that are hard to count, minority communities, those with less resources. And exactly what you said, John, is that, with the rhetoric from the White House, a lot of people, especially in the Latino community and in the immigrant community, are afraid to maybe answer that door or to fill out the census. And we as a caucus, wanted to make sure that people understand the importance of the census, but also to know that, look, that question's not going to be on there, and also your information's protected.
Yes.
Every single time that we've had the census, that information's only used for the purposes of statistics. Your private information is not going to be used for anything else. And so that's why, even though this is a national thing that's happening, the success of it's going to be by local partners, including ourselves,
right.
Businesses, and so we encourage everyone to start talking about the census.
I think some people think when it comes to voting that my vote doesn't matter. Maybe the same thing with the census. They couldn't be more wrong. Every vote counts. Every part of the census counts. Omar and Lisa, thanks for stopping on by today. We appreciate
Thank you for
it.
having us.
Absolutely. And to register and get more information on the conference and some other things that they're doing, visit ILLCF.net. There is that conference, a new framework for equity, Friday, November 22nd.